G'day, Benny Wallington, peak performance coach and writer for Blue Chip Minds here. And welcome to Heart to Hand, writing for performance and creativity. I'm really grateful and stoked to be able to share some of these techniques that I've been using with clients for a few years now that have had really interesting results, getting a bit creative, dropping into those flow states, and potentially come from that space over left field. You know that saying, coming from over left field? It came out of nowhere, like out of left field. Hopefully there's a few things like that that will inspire you, and it's just some little nuggets that you can take away. If you haven't already, you can download an accompanying worksheet for the workshop. Just go to bluechipminds.com/pinnacle and follow along at your own pace. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land that I'm speaking to you from. I'm on the Gold Coast, on Yugambeh country, and pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. I'd also like to pay my respects to the traditional custodians of the land from which you are listening. As always, I start all my workshops with a breath. It helps us get connected, even though we might be watching this at different times in different places. It's still a beautiful sentiment, and it's actually pivotal to pretty much all the work that I do when it comes to flow states and any form of performance and creativity. So I'd just like you to think about potentially what's happened before you've come into this workshop, whether it's good or bad. I'd like you to let that go. And I'm going to incorporate something from Deborah Rosman, who is the CEO of the HeartMath Institute, a company that I highly respect when it comes to breath-brain connection, as well as heart connection, obviously. So let's just do 2 rounds. But before we do that, I'm just going to drop in a little bit of what Deborah has to say. And she talks about heart-centered breathing. And when you focus your attention on the area of your heart and allows you to let go of what you've been thinking or doing, like I just mentioned, it allows you to actually change your heart rhythm pattern and calm your autonomic nervous system. So by focusing on your heart, you're taking energy away from the undesirable emotions. You generate a positive attitude or feeling, which starts to shift the signal the heart sends to the brain. So the brain response is different. It changes your physiology to move into a heart-brain coherence and alignment. Lots of powerful words there, but just focusing on, I guess, that heart-brain connection and the power of the heart. And so let's just do a couple of rounds of breathing in wherever you find it comfortable. I highly suggest if you can do nasal breathing, do that. And I just want you to focus on breathing into the heart, into that middle of the chest area, and just observe it. It might be the first time you've done it. You might do it all the time, but it's just a beautiful practice to get started with. So I'd like you to empty your lungs and breathe in, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, into the heart, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4. Just find a nice steady rhythm. And like I always say, breathe every time you remember to. You find that conscious breath every time you remember to. And anchoring is going to be an important part of this workshop. So if you can find an anchor, like that first wake up, like potentially when you really need to focus, find that breath and potentially breathe it into the heart. I'm going to start off with head-centered reactionary approaches. It's because we've all written that email or text or created that proposal even and did it in a way that wasn't in alignment. And maybe we've been too focused on the head. And if we're too focused on the head and reactions, automatic reactions, we can tend to go from our heads straight into someone else's heads. And it may end up looking a little bit like this. And so what we're going to be talking about is how do we identify these situations so they don't get to there and have it look something a little bit more like this. And I believe that composed, heart-centered communication can lead to more honesty and better creative expression. And we're going to start with something that's become an absolute game changer for me, super pivotal. And that is the art of clean communication, which is an adaptation from Christine McDougall's work at Syntropic World. Now you can see Johnny and Amir here. Clean communication would be signified as this line, coherence between the two. We're all energy, and so this means we carry a charge with our relationships. This goes for human to human, human to animal, plants to plants, everything to everything. But we're just going to focus on Johnny and Amir here. So Amir on the right has said something to Johnny on the left about how he wears his denim, God forbid, which he has taken a slight offence to. Johnny feels a negative charge. Now, if Johnny takes a breath and responds to this right now, it should be all apples. But if he leaves it, I think you can guess what's about to happen. Christine talks about the feelings that Johnny might be going through based on what Amir's said. And we could be feeling, or he could be feeling, slight discomfort in part of his body, a feeling of nausea, breathlessness, increased heart rate, even physical shock, or in the heart or gut area. It's interestingly back to the heart. Or he may be registering such thoughts as, something's not right, I do not believe them, something's missing, they're having a go at me, I sense sarcasm, attack, bitterness, a hidden agenda. Or it may result in ideas such as, or you may be feeling ideas such as attack, ridicule, deception, lying, manipulation. Kind of can ramp right up the scale. And sometimes you're not even aware of low-grade issues until much later. I'm sure we've gone home before in the past and sat down with our cup of tea and gone, oh, that was actually a little bit mean. So we can actually have differences in perception over time. And you've got to keep in mind also that Amir may have no idea that there's been a negative charge created, but it is growing. And as Johnny, as we've all been before, if you do experience those feelings, you cannot assume that your experience is a true interpretation of the other person's communication. Very crucial point. You can only acknowledge that this is your experience and your own reality. So you have to do a bit of inquiry. On the other hand, Amir may have delivered that unclean communication with intention. This means there's an issue occurring between the two of them and it needs to be addressed. And for those of us who are like me as well, who don't like a confrontation, this may be an unpleasant experience. However, the consequences of not doing it are far worse, as the issue will continue to evolve and a major upset occurs. Little atrocities build, and with one of those parties numbing to the situation or falling under a kind of spell, building up of such a degree of toxic residue can blow up into some form of terrible outcome. And it's all just small, unaddressed, unclean communication or negative communication that can really create this drive or this divide between the two. You'll be carrying the energy of the unclean communication everywhere with you. Unless you have very, very high emotional intelligence, you'll find it very hard to step back into any form of communication with this person without carrying some form of negative charge. So when it gets to this stage, an example could be, if you're Johnny, you just say to Amir, yesterday when we were talking about my denim, you mentioned it was last season. I may not have heard your message clearly. Would we be able to discuss this, just to be sure I'm on the right wavelength with you? What did you mean by last season? And Amir says, last season was the best, man. Mine is new and just doesn't feel the same. I was going to ask if we could trade. They both laugh. Sounds a little bit like a Will Ferrell movie, but you get the point, because in my humble opinion, this results in a positive charge now. And Amir and Johnny have built a new baseline for open inquiry into confusion. Very important. We can now have open, clean communication because that's what we've created. Christine goes on to say that even without the staff training and within a healthy culture, a leader who operates from clean communication will build powerful relationships and demonstrate the highest level of leadership integrity. And just to recap, we've got negative, which could potentially be more your head-centered, shooting from the hip kind of communication. You've got clean, which is a nice stasis. And then, in my opinion, you've got your heart-centered, which is really how we're building amazing relationships where we can be more creative and actually find a sense of collaborative group flow. Christine goes on to say that even without a full staff training of clean communication, within a healthy work culture, a leader who operates from clean communication will build powerful relationships and demonstrate the highest level of leadership integrity. And just like Johnny did there, he displayed an example of clean communication, which then Amir can take on board as well for future communications. So let's say you're right in the middle of it, you feel the charge, and you need to respond right there and then. You guessed it, go back to the breath. And just a simple 4 seconds in, 4 seconds out. It could be 3 seconds in, 3 seconds out, just like we practiced at the top. And breathe into that heart space and just practice it. This is a very kind of new technique to a lot of people, but most people will allow you to take a deep breath in and then see what you respond with. The other element, and this is if you've got a bit more time, is something where if you can take it for a night sleep, let the subconscious sort some things out for you. There's something called the Zeganek effect. By Bluma Zeganek, who was a Russian psychologist in the 1920s. And she worked out that our brains are awesome when we pose a question and leave our conscious mind hanging. So my suggestion would be to sleep on it if you have the time, or if you don't need to write straight back. But inquire before bed with the question and use breath work to drift off, because it could be something that's really setting, I guess, making your blood boil or setting that charge alight. And if you actually can't get to sleep because that question's too big, I'd suggest journaling as another one. Now, before we get into some fun stuff, some practical stuff, I just want to drop in and talk a little bit about flow, because flow is integral into this process of high creativity and peak performance. Often it'll be interchanged between the two when people are talking about flow and peak performance and creativity and joy and expression. And the 4 parts of flow that tend to show up, and you might have heard them before, are a feeling of selflessness, which is kind of like we shed all those masks that we potentially have been wearing, and our inner critic goes quiet, and we're able to really show up in the present as ourselves. There's timelessness, which is a sense of time dilation. So sometimes time may slow down, sometimes it might speed up. There's effortlessness. It's just everything comes natural. Just think of the flow of a river. It's like that. It's just naturally flowing. And richness, which is kind of, in my opinion, the most special. And that is this rich flow of information that we have in our brains. We can connect dots. We can write symphonies. We can do amazing things with our minds and our bodies. And the Flow Genome Project call it a heightened state where action and awareness merge, time flies, self vanishes, and performance goes through the roof. In flow, we feel our best and perform our best. And flow is open to everyone. We've all felt it at some point in our lives. We might have to dig back, and we'll do that in a moment. But it's literally not just for action sports athletes or phenomenal musicians. All of us have accessed it, and we were accessing it in high levels in our youth. It's also a wildly personal experience. My flow is different to your flow, is different to the next person's flow. So it's important to recognize that you're not going to find it in the exact same places as your family or your best friends. You may, but there's going to be nuance to all these things, and there's going to be different feelings because it's quite a wild experience. That comes in small and large doses. The technical term is micro and macro flow. So you might not get that complete immersion like you would, say, if you were catching a wave and you got into the barrel, or if you were riding and time just melted away. But you might get glimpses of it. And it's not to say you can't have those large doses. When we practice and when we have good techniques for good, clean communication and creative outlets and knowing where we find flow, we can find it in larger doses. And I'd like you just to have a quick think. Where do you think you've experienced flow? Don't think about it too long. We'll jump back to this, but just have a little bit of a percolate on where something has shown up which ticks a lot of those boxes, those stir boxes: selflessness, timelessness, effortlessness, and richness of information. Now I want to do a bit of priming for heart-centered creativity. This particular method, the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 method, is used traditionally from transforming negative to positive situations. And I love priming. Priming is amazing. Think about it like a layup in basketball or volleyball, where someone sets you up and then you do the slam dunk. And I would love you to follow along with these as we go, because they'll be important for the crescendo and the ultimate flow prime that we'll do very soon. So I'd like you just to, while you're sitting there, think about 5 things you can see. And the reason why I like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 is because we'll probably remember this. So just have a look. Is it a laptop? Is it a window? Is it old photos? Is it some sheets? Is it the light? What can you see? And what are 4 things that you can touch? The laptop again, the rug under your feet. Maybe it's your face. It's good to know that that's still there. Maybe it's the pen there. What are 4 things you can touch? And just do it. 3 things you can hear. So, can you hear some birds? Can you hear some tapping? Can you hear the wind? Can you hear some rain? Maybe a car. Maybe that annoying person across the street playing their music too loud. But then when you listen closely, it's actually a beautiful symphony. What are the 2 things that you can smell? Just take a moment just to smell some things. Smell yourself. See if you're doing okay, working from home. Maybe it's a scented candle. And what's the 1 thing that you can taste? It might be something that you've had before, like your tea or coffee. You might still have a biscuit there. Whatever it is, just feel around inside your mouth and see if there's any sensations of taste there. So basically what you've done is you've just lit up your 5 senses and diffused your focus on what may have been bothering you. Psychologist Ellen Hendrickson says bringing our attention to our senses grounds us in the present, and counting the items interrupts the spinning of our thoughts. So there you go, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You can do it anytime, any place, anywhere. That's the same thing. Now, back to when were you in flow? This is really the crux of this exercise. I want you to identify a time when you're in flow. Essentially, it was birth of a child, writing a script, scoring a goal, surfing a wave, playing some music, dancing like nobody's watching. And we're going to channel that flow state. Some people might call this an anchor, and it's going to be my gift to you for the rest of your life. Well, it's actually your gift to you because you were there, I wasn't, but I'm helping you to access it. So once you've got the flow state, or this time of bliss and presence and enjoyment, I'd like you to write it down somewhere. You can use your laptop, you can use your phone. Preferably, you would use a pen and paper. It's a bit more visceral. And I'd like you to assess that state of flow. Take yourself back there through the senses. So you can ask yourself, what can you see? What can you touch? What can you hear? What can you smell? What can you taste? It doesn't necessarily have to be 5 separate things and 4 and 3 and 2 and 1. Just the things that show up that were super clear. What was there? Even who was there? And now that you've done that, I'm sure if you needed more time, you can pause. You probably would need more time. Grab your pen, preferably. Again, if you're a tech person and you just only do laptops, that's fine. And I want you to find a nice steady breath. And we're going to get comfortable. I want you just to shake anything else off. Anything else is tied around the neck or the shoulders. And if you've got that pen handy, you can keep it close so you know where it is, the pen and paper. And I want you to close your eyes. Just gently close your eyes. And I want you to drop into that moment. I want you to remember that moment that we've just been writing about. I want you to breathe into your heart. I want you to feel the breath this time really charging up your heart. Just find that nice rhythm. I want you to find yourself in that flow state, in that place where you were. And we're going to do 3 bigger breaths into the heart. Just finding your own rhythm, but just make sure there's a little bit more glorious energy going into your heart. Now, when you're ready, I want you to take a final deep breath in and draw the breath right into your heart and into the present and hold it there. Feel the charge. Immerse yourself even deeper in what you can see, hear, touch, smell, taste. And when you're ready, I'd love you to breathe out. And as you do breathe out, I want you to imagine a shot of light coming from your heart and into your writing hand as you breathe out. And then it's over to you. Write down whatever comes to mind. It might come out as a drawing, it might come out as poetry or just words. It doesn't really matter. But I'd love you just to free flow write for as long as you need be. Now you can use this technique whenever you want, and if you're still going, feel free to pause and take as long as you like. These priming techniques and breath work are totally malleable. You can use them and create your own versions. You can use them with your teams. You can use them to write emails back to people when you might be feeling that negative charge. You use it for creative writing, drawing, painting. You're really anchoring into that positive state, connected to that sense of time, and using it to trigger presence and joy. It's a beautiful practice for a morning. If you're one who finds it hard to journal sometimes in the morning and you just need to get all the thoughts out of your head, you can start with something similar to this or the exact same protocol. It's up to you. And to finish off with a little bonus, I'm going to just share with you something I call drink priming. I'm sure if you drink coffee or tea, you will have in the past used it for getting work done. And I love coffee. It's one of my biggest vices. However, I do feel like it's very head-centered. And it can be magical and beautiful and drive epic connections. But if I'm working on something where I want to get creative, or if I want to just down-regulate and I might be feeling that negative charge, my suggestion would be to try something similar to coffee, but different. And it's called cacao. And it's an ancient Mayan superfood, abundant in essential minerals, vitamins, and antioxidants, plus naturally occurring conscious-altering compounds that bring energy, clarity, enhanced mood, bliss, and creativity. Don't worry, it's all legal. And I find that if I want heart-centered communication, this is the drink I'll drink. And I'll chuck a link in with a little bit of a recipe. But if you can find ceremonial grade cacao around, probably at your health food specialist, I would highly recommend just changing it up every now and then. Maybe just try it on a Friday, It could be ceremonial Friday for you and just see how you go. And it's delicious. Sometimes it can be even more delicious than a coffee. And thanks for tuning in again. I always love these sessions. So if you want to turn your knowledge into wisdom, you can download your complimentary worksheet at www.bluechipminds.com/pinnacle. And I'll see you beautiful people next time.